So Joey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure.
I've
Thank you.
listened to Hang, and it's kind of a dark and somber record. The lyrics,
It is.
the mood is kind of dark. Also, the album cover is very confronting. Uh, what was going on when you wrote Hang, and how did it change you as a person?
Well, I think for many, many years I had maintained a sort of dedication to not mixing my views politically with the music that I wrote. Always felt that it was with melancholic songwriting. I think that it's maybe more powerful to write about pain and human nature issues and these sorts of things. But it doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of ideas about the world that I live in, you know. But I just always figured I would leave this sort of thing to a band like Propaganda to write about. And I'm not saying that this record is like that, but I've just made a decision at some point, probably because I had my daughter, and I think at some point after my daughter was born, it became easier to write about more political things, you know. And so at one point I just thought, well, we've never done this with Lagwagon, I've never done this in any band, I just really want to write a record that is sort of my view, my observation of the world that my daughter has to grow up in. And I wanted it to be a little bit conceptual, hopefully totally conceptual, but it wasn't. It didn't turn out that way. I knew that I wanted to use a certain amount of literary devices like reoccurring themes, words, imagery, you know, like the bees, the noose, the word hang, you know, just these things have multiple meaning to me. And so I wanted things to reoccur throughout the record. I wanted it to have a feel like a conceptual record, and it basically just represent a certain amount of my view of the world I live in. And so I spent about 2 years writing the lyrics, and I wrote many pieces for it, many more than are on the record, but those are the ones that ended up on the record, and to my best ability I tried to make them work together. And I don't know, I'm proud of it. I feel like it represents me well. It's really just a series of my rants, the kind of stuff that I get drunk with my friends and I'm talking about. You know, somebody brings something up about, you know, current politics, current issues in the world, and then here goes Joey. I start going, you know, and then a friend of mine will say, you should write about that. And I say, I don't want to write about that. I'm going to write about my dead friends. It's so much easier.
And you're getting it out.
Yeah, and so
you're dealing with it.
I really like singing these songs. I mean, there's like kind of it's a little bit more passion at this age that I'm at this point in my life. I have a little more passion sometimes singing these new songs.
You have more experience.
Definitely more experience, but it feels good to sing about the things that, you know, that are on Hang. I really feel it feels powerful to me again. And you know, it's not to say that I didn't always write from the heart. The lyrics I wrote were often inspired by really heartbreaking things that happened in my life. Clearly, I think if you read the lyrics, you see that, you know, there's a lot of friends that I lost and a lot of heartbreak. And but this was different because it was just focused more on people's behavior, and my problem with the way we're evolving as a species it's nice to write about that. It's also like really makes me angry, you know.
Do you feel angry when you're singing these songs?
Yes, but it feels good because I haven't done a lot of that. You know, I haven't done a lot of hateful kind of music, and this is by no means hateful. I mean, the center theme to me on the record is about empathy. I mean, I think empathy is something that human beings and everything and the planet, all of species, we can't survive without human beings having empathy. If we don't have empathy, then we're not going to be able to live together. Because
I think having a daughter can really change it because you're responsible for something like that.
Yes.
There's one line in the song that says, "My daughter has to live here too," and
Yeah.
I kept thinking about that.
Yeah. That was one of the last songs I wrote for the record, Poison in the Well, and it was because I was walking my daughter. I live in a pretty urban neighborhood, you know. It's in San Francisco, which is a very wealthy city, but I live in maybe one of the not so nice parts of the city, and there's just, I don't know, it's like there's so much litter. A lot of the people that live there just are fine with littering, and I think littering is like almost the only thing that should be a capital offense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kidding. I don't believe in capital punishment at all, but it's
but
just
I get what
so
you're saying.
terrible.
Yeah.
Like, you only have to walk another 20 feet to the waste basket, you know, or just keep it in your car or whatever. But I literally have seen people in my neighborhood. I'm walking with my daughter, we're holding hands, and someone drives by and throws out a soda thing, like, and just lands right next to us. And it's kind of like,
You want to pick it up and throw it back.
yeah, and then there's like we live by a junior high, we live by some schools for children, but much older than my daughter, and these are like the kids that we see every day because they get out of school, and maybe my daughter and I are walking around down there, and some of them, the way they talk, I really honestly can't even understand what they're saying anymore. It's so broken. The English is so broken, and it's escalating, and there's this sort of like arrogant pride in how absolutely shitty the person is speaking. You know, they're just destroying a language, you know, for like, and they're proud of it, and it's just this all these people that it just feels like they have. It's so hard not to feel like we have no future when you're surrounded by people that have no soul, you know, that just have, and no empathy, and no, it's just really insensitive and just awful. And, you know, a lot of my neighbors are really wonderful people. A lot of them are very, very sweet. I think that most people are good. I still believe that. So, you know, there's a lot of hope in it, but that's what that song was about. It was just like my daughter just going, "Oh my God, Dad, did you see that guy's pants? You know, they were down here." I mean, I get it. That's a style thing, but it's so extreme, and with some of the gangster guys in my neighborhood, that it's just like, literally, she's just looking at their ass.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not.
How old is she?
She's 11 now. I think I started writing those lyrics. Well, I think I started to really feel that way about certain people in my neighborhood. It's just sort of a thing that I started to notice when she was like 6 or something. And then everywhere I went in the world, there's just this kind of like, I know everybody when they get older, they look at the younger generation and they go, "Oh man, these people, they don't read, they don't know anything, and they don't want to know anything, and they want everything right now, and they're selfish, shitty, fucking, you know." I know we all do this. I know it's hard not to do this. I mean, but what it does is it creates empathy for a generation past. I look at my grandparents who have now all passed away. I think about them and I think, oh my God, it must have been tremendously hard for them when they were in their 80s and 90s before they died. You know, just living in Los Angeles, for example. And the world has this everywhere, but it's something that I think is okay to acknowledge because it does create an empathy for where we're headed. You know, this sort of dumbing down of culture and convolution. Everything is getting more and more convoluted. It's like history and the things that we look at, we're not making the connections anymore to where they came from in so many ways, younger people especially, I think. And there's no desire for it. It's really sad. And I don't want my daughter to live that way. I don't want her to not respect her elders. I don't want her to not respect history and understand that when her country is fighting a war, that we've already learned this lesson. I want her to know. I want her to understand that people have made these mistakes before, and I want her to be smart about it. And lucky for me, she loves to read. She's very well read. She might even be surpassing me already. Like, she's reading novels that I read in my 20s and 30s, and she's only 11.
She's smart.
She's really smart. And she cares, and she's really sweet. And I'm just very lucky. And I think that that has a lot more to do with my wife, because for me, she might get a little bit more of a bitter, angry. And my wife is just very, very sweet and just wouldn't hurt a fly. So there's so that's what Poison in the Well, that's why I was inspired, I guess.
When I went to high school, I was kind of an outsider. I never really cared for being the popular type of girl.
Good for you.
I never went to all the parties, to the discos.
I want my daughter to be like you. I
Thank
really
you.
do. Yes.
So
you must see that you were lucky in a way, yeah?
I can relate to that. I just went to punk rock concerts. I did my own thing, and I didn't really care about what people thought of me.
That's awesome. Bravo.
And lately, I've been hearing a lot of stories about kids in school that are being bullied. I read it in the papers. Kids are being bullied at school. Even adults have to deal with it at work. And these are adults.
I know.
And it's just so easy to bully someone online. I mean, you just type some nasty things and then you log off, and you don't have to deal with it face to face.
Yeah, and some of these kids are committing suicide, and it's just it's really awful.
And I care a lot about that. Have you ever been in such a situation, and how did you overcome it?
Oh yes. I was very small when I was a child. I was bullied a lot when I was a kid, and I have stories, that come to mind immediately, like where I was teamed up on by a bunch of guys, and they just teased me for a week, 2 weeks, and physically being beat up a lot. But they're not important stories. The important part of it is that, okay, these are bad things that happen to people, and sometimes people turn into really terrible people because of this, But other times I think the reaction is more like mine. I think it just made me more sensitive, and I feel like it's not a terrible thing, some of the things I went through. It's really interesting because I don't know that I would have been any kind of artist if I hadn't had some kind of those sorts of things. Any kind of suffering is something that's important to have feelings. Sometimes it makes people like sociopathic, they lose everything.
You gotta be strong to overcome it.
I don't think I experienced anything that was that brutal. Some of the things were really close, but I know some people that are, I knew some people that I think might have been sociopaths, and I also knew what they went through, and that's something that's also very understandable. But the thing is, I don't think I ever would have been able to write songs if I hadn't had pain in my life. So in a weird kind of way, like some of these guys, like I know how they grew up and what they became and where they went with their lives, and there's sort of like a tiny bit of justice. It's like I ended up doing something that I love to do with my life because I didn't have a choice, and I wrote about these things, and some of these people you can like figure out where they ended up by maybe you go to like a high school reunion. I never went to any of those things, but I just, you hear about it, especially because of Facebook, and that was when all this, and then you see like this guy that was just terrible to you for a big part of your childhood. He was just the worst bully, and he's bald and overweight, and he's an accountant or something, which like you can't possibly love. Well, maybe, I don't know, if you really love
karma,
it's just a little bit of that. Every once in a while, you kind of go, you know what, I'm really very happy with my life. I have a great family, I have a great band, and I do what I love, and so, I think people like that, they're just passing something on, too. You have to always have empathy with people that are bullies, too, because they're probably bullies because their parents are terrible. I mean, maybe a lot of people shouldn't have children. you know, because they're mean to their children, and then their children end up being mean.
Or the parents never told them what's the right thing to do, or they didn't blame them for being a bully.
Which is another kind of abuse. You know, not guiding your child. That's all they want. When a child is a child, the only thing they want is you to care about what they're doing. The only thing they want from you is for you to be proud of them. And
I still do.
Yeah, me too. I still feel it. Like, you know, I'm almost 50. I'm going to be 50 this year. Yikes. I can't believe that. It's so weird. Because I feel like I'm 20, but I don't know.
Act like you're 20.
Yeah, I live like I'm 20. I think it's part of the secret.
Age is just a number.
It is. I totally agree. But, you know, I mean, I'm going to be 50, and I still, every once in a while, my dad will tell me how proud he is of me, or he'll, you know, he started getting into the networks. You know, he's like almost 90 years old, and he's 87, and a while back he started like following me on, you know, I do the network stuff mostly to promote the music I'm making. You know, I'm not a super social guy in that world, but my dad is super funny. You know, he started following things, and then he would post on like a post that, oh, I'm so proud of you, son. And
that's so sweet.
It's really nice. And then people love to see that. You know, other people would read it and they go, oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Joey, you're involved in so many different projects. How do you cope with that? How do you make it work as well as professionally, as personally, and family-wise?
Well, you know, my answer usually to this question, I get asked that question a lot, obviously, but I always have sort of the same answer, but it's just because it's true. I mean, I'm a musician, you know, I'm a songwriter. It's just what I do. I don't have another job other than being a parent, and which is a more important job, obviously. But I think that when you're in a band, sometimes the band takes breaks. Sometimes they don't do things for a while, and yeah, I just keep doing creative stuff when that's happening because I don't want to do anything else. You know, it's what I do. So I think because of that, over the years, certain things have started. You know, in the interim between tours that Lagwagon was doing. Hey, you know, maybe we'll form a cover band that sings all these silly 70s songs that I loved growing up when I was a kid. And we'll make them punk rock. You know, like these ideas pop up. And at one point I was really getting into doing kind of music that was a little bit more experimental than the things that Lagwagon does. And mainly like instrumentally, you know, and so that's really why Bad Astronaut came to life. I wanted to try something different, and these guys are all old friend of mine, so there were some songs that I didn't feel like really fit Lagwagon. I could go on and on about this, but Carmen de Sombra. I can't say it. It's hard for me to say it that fast.
Is it like shadows or something?
Yeah, that's what it means. Yeah, and so basically what happened was we sat and between the three of us in English and French, we kind of wrote the lyrics together. Something I do all the time with people in English. But what was interesting was, you know, then he would say, oh yeah, and he would say something in French, and then Chris would go, you know, kind of. And it was like they were trying to work that out or something, but I think Chris's French is not so good. And so he wrote all these words, and I thought, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. Like, we came up with these ideas, like we helped him get what it was. That's what you do. You know, you don't, if you're producing something, you don't say what you want to say. You try to talk to them for a while, and you figure out, eventually they say something and you go, that's it. That's the thing, right? Isn't that it? And they go, yeah, that's it. And then you kind of try to bring it out of them. And it's a great thing to do when writing lyrics with other people, because you can really be a good, you know, sounding board for them to get to the core of what they're trying to say. And so this is what we did. But then he was writing in Francais, and I don't,
Yeah.
of course, have any idea what he's writing down. So the next morning, we record the song, and we do it live, and he nails it. And it's just like, awesome. So perfect. We'll put it last on the record, just so that if any of your fans in Quebec, they listen to the record and they're mad that you didn't do a French song, then the last song will be in Francais, and they'll say, all right, well, at least there was one. And I feel great about this. And we had to ditch another song, to do that. But I thought it was a very important thing. And later, we started talking about direct translations of the lyrics, and they were very different than what we had talked about the night before. And I was like, oh. But it doesn't matter. It's a really beautiful song, and I don't recall exactly what the lyrics are about. I know there's something about, there's a metaphor there for the moon and the shadows being like something that happened in your past following you. And then there's supposed to be a turn when the key change happens and it goes to a major key where it starts talking about the sun. But I don't think that happens. And that's the thing, I am remembering this now. That was the thing I was like, oh, but that was the thing, whatever. But that wasn't his thing. Anyway, he was great to work with. He's a very sweet guy. I'm going to do some shows with him in September. And actually, I think I have a show with him in May in Montreal.
Okay. So you're...
And I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm really proud of him because, a lot of these people won't drop their work or have the guts to just go to Europe with a guitar. He's like all over Europe, just playing shows. And I see some of them are like outside, he's busking and things, I mean, that takes balls, and good balls. I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. I mean, I just
you
mean,
gotta take a risk.
It's
achieve
very brave.
something.
It's very brave, and I'm so proud of that. I only wish that I could support him more. But there's something that I have to make clear. I say this a lot because I want people to understand that One Week Records is not a record label. It's a session label. It's more like the BBC thing, People come. I like the idea that I can discover people maybe that the world hasn't heard, and I'm hoping that I can build it to a point where I can expose people that I think are great songwriters, like Joe, and the last guy I did, and the girl before. Oh my! I have 2 releases coming up that I'm so proud of. They're so good, and there's really unknown artists. Nobody has ever heard of them, and I think the records are great. But ultimately, after the record's done, we don't manufacture, and it's not really a money thing. Like, we're not making the kind of money that we can afford to pay for press. Luckily, I'm in a band that gets interviewed a lot, so I get to talk about it a lot.
So they can benefit from your...
Yeah, and I love that. It's really a fortunate thing for them, especially, I think, that I get to talk about them a lot and the records that I'm doing. But we can't really afford to spend money because we don't really make money. Not yet, anyway. We'll see. Maybe it'll change, but so it's like,
He's got his record out.
Yes,
so
it's like we put him in a boat and we and then we send them off, and then hopefully they get a record deal and get some tours, and I'm really hoping that it works for some of these guys because they're really good. And it's a weird world we live in. It's far too difficult to find music and far too easy to find music. Anyone can just go, here's my stuff, and when everyone is doing it, then nothing's special. It's not.
You gotta find something unique.
It's really difficult. You have to work hard to find things that are new and that you love, and so record labels need to exist for that reason, and also groundswell from popularity needs to exist. There's a reason that millions of bands came from nowhere and nothing, and stuff started circulating, and enough people started talking. You know what I mean?
It takes a lot to get noticed.
It's hard now, and it's really sad. But I like the idea that I can do something that's just very fast, and I'm simply just saying this guy writes good songs, or this woman writes good songs. That's all I want to do, and I love producing. I love it. So it's win-win. So far, so good.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
This was so nice talking to you and
Yeah,
getting
thank you.
to know you personally.
Oh,
So,
thanks. Yeah, thank you for the for my prize.
Cheers.
I'm glad I didn't lose.
well, thank you, Joey.
No, it was
and
really
I
a
hope
pleasure.
You're having
Yeah,
an
yeah.
awesome concert tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was lovely.